I've gone back and forth on whether I should ever talk about this publicly. I'm not even sure I believe all of it myself. But the details have stayed sharp in my mind in a way normal memories don't. They sit there, unchanged, like they're waiting for something. This happened in late January of 2022. At the time, I was living alone in a split-level house just outside a small town in northern Michigan. The neighborhood backed up directly into state forest land. No fence, no real boundary, just a gradual thinning of lawns into trees. It was the kind of place people move to because they want quiet. I worked remotely, didn't go out much, and honestly preferred it that way. I had a routine. That's important. Every morning before work, I'd take my dog Archer out for a walk. He was a German Shepherd mix, about 90 pounds, and extremely alert. Not aggressive, just observant in a way that sometimes made me feel like he was picking up on things I wasn't. That morning started like any other. Snow overnight. Not heavy, just enough to soften everything. The sky was that dull winter gray that makes it feel earlier than it actually is. I clipped Archer's leash on, grabbed my phone and keys, and headed toward the tree line behind my house. There's a trail back there that locals use. It's unofficial but well-worn. I'd walked it dozens of times. About 10 minutes in, Archer slowed down. His ears went up, and he stopped pulling like he usually did. He kept stopping to sniff the ground, then looking ahead, then back at me. I remember joking out loud, asking him what his problem was. That's when I noticed the footprints. They weren't fresh, but they were clear. Large boots, bigger than mine. They weren't following the trail exactly, more like pacing it, stepping on and off. That alone wasn't that strange. People wander. What bothered me was the direction. They were coming from deeper in the woods toward my house. I stood there longer than I should have, staring at them. Archer let out a low sound I'd never heard him make before. Not a growl, more like a warning hum. I told myself it was nothing. Someone walking early. Hunter, maybe. I turned us around and went home. The rest of the day passed normally. Meetings, emails, coffee reheated too many times. By evening, the snow had picked up again, and the wind was loud enough to hear through the walls. Around 8:30 p.m., Archer started barking. Not his usual someone walked by bark. This was sharp, repetitive, focused. I checked the front window, nothing. Back window, nothing. Then the motion light in the backyard came on. I couldn't see much, just swirling snow and the edge of the trees. The light flicked off again after a few seconds. Archer didn't stop barking. I grabbed my phone and stepped closer to the glass. That's when the light came back on. There was someone standing just beyond the edge of my yard. They weren't moving. They were tall. That's what stood out first. Broad shoulders. Hood up, face completely shadowed. They weren't looking around. They were looking straight at my house. At me. I backed away from the window slowly. My heart was pounding, but I wasn't panicking yet. I told myself it was a neighbor cutting through, someone lost, someone checking something. The light shut off again. I didn't see the person leave. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I found footprints in the snow behind my house, the same size as the ones on the trail. They stopped about 15 feet from my back door. Then they turned around and went back into the trees. I called my brother and told him about it, half expecting him to laugh it off. He didn't. He told me to get cameras. I ordered a cheap camera set that afternoon. 2 nights later, I was woken up by a notification on my phone. Motion detected backyard. The timestamp said 2:17 a.m. I opened the live feed. At first, I didn't see anything, just snow. Then, something shifted near the camera's edge. A face leaned into view. Close. Too close. The hood was down this time. I could see skin. Pale. Bearded. His eyes were wide, reflecting the infrared light. He smiled slowly, like he knew I was watching. Then the feed cut out. The camera never worked again. The police came the next day. They took a report, walked the property, found nothing. One of them suggested animals had triggered the camera, and the face was probably distortion. I nodded, signed paperwork, felt stupid. For a few weeks after that, nothing happened. I started to relax. Then my phone rang at work one afternoon. Unknown number. I didn't answer. A minute later, I got a text. "You walk your dog earlier now." My stomach dropped. I typed back asking who it was. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. I checked my location settings. Everything was normal. I changed my routine immediately. Different times, different routes. Drove instead of walked. It didn't matter. The messages kept coming. Short ones. Observations. "Your porch light flickers. Archer doesn't like the wind. You leave your blinds open at night." I never replied again. One night, around 11 p.m., my power went out. The whole house went dark. The wind was calm. No storm. Archer stood up slowly, staring down the hallway toward the back door. I grabbed a flashlight and my phone and locked myself in the bedroom. That's when I heard footsteps on the deck. Slow, heavy, then a knock. Once, twice. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. A voice came through the door. Low, calm. "I know you're home." I don't know how long I sat there. Eventually, the footsteps retreated. The power came back on an hour later. The next morning, there was a package on my porch. No label. Inside was my old trail map, the one I'd lost months ago, folded neatly, a circle drawn around my house. That was when I decided to leave. I packed what I could and drove south to stay with a friend in Indiana. I didn't tell anyone where I was going except my brother. For a while, things were quiet. Then, on the drive down, I stopped for gas just off the highway somewhere in Ohio. Late evening. Empty station. As I was pulling back onto the road, I noticed a car behind me. Dark SUV. No plates on the front. It stayed behind me for miles. When I sped up, it sped up. When I slowed down, it did too. I took an exit I didn't need. It followed. I didn't stop until I reached my friend's place. The SUV never pulled in. A week later, I got one final message. A picture. It was of my old backyard. Snow-covered. Empty. Caption underneath, "You forgot something." I changed my number after that. Moved again. Cameras everywhere now. Lights always on. Nothing has happened since. But sometimes, when I'm driving at night, I'll catch headlights behind me that stay just a little too steady. And Archer. He still stops sometimes on walks, stares into the distance, listening to something I can't hear. I don't know what that man wanted. I don't know how close I came to something worse. All I know is that, whoever he was, he knew my life better than I did. And I don't think he ever stopped watching. I didn't think anything was wrong at first because nothing happened. That's the part people don't understand. There was no break-in, no warning, no obvious threat. Just a slow realization that someone had been fitting themselves into my life without me noticing. This was in early 2023. I had just moved into a small rental house in rural upstate New York. The place sat near a frozen lake and backed into dense woods. It was cheap, quiet, and isolated, exactly what I wanted after a rough year. The landlord told me the previous tenant had left suddenly, but I didn't press him on it. The first week was uneventful. The second week, I started noticing things out of place. Nothing dramatic. A chair slightly angled when I knew I'd pushed it in. The bathroom light off when I was sure I'd left it on. My boots moved closer to the door than I remembered. I blamed routine disruption. New house, new habits. One night, while brushing my teeth, I realized the mirror was warm. Not foggy, warm. Like someone had been standing there recently. I laughed it off, and went to bed. That night, I dreamed someone was standing in my doorway. Not entering, not moving, just standing there, breathing quietly. When I woke up, my bedroom door was open. I never sleep with it open. I started locking it. A few days later, I came home from work and found my TV paused. I don't pause the TV. If I'm leaving, I turn it off. The remote was on the couch facing upward. That's when I checked the attic. Nothing up there except insulation, dust, and old wood. No signs of anyone staying. No footprints, no trash, nothing. I told myself I was being paranoid. Then the sound started. Not footsteps. Breathing. At night, when everything was quiet. I could hear it through the walls. Slow. Controlled. Always just barely audible. Whenever I held my breath to listen harder, it would stop. Like whatever it was knew I was listening. I installed cameras after that. One in the living room. One facing the back door. One in the hallway. The first night, nothing. The second night, motion alert at 3:11 a.m. I checked the footage. The hallway camera turned on. Nothing moved, but the audio picked something up. Breathing. Very close to the mic. I didn't sleep at all after that. The next day, I noticed something that made my hands shake. The attic access panel in the hallway ceiling, it was open. Just a crack. Maybe an inch. That night, I slept with the lights on and my phone in my hand. At 2:58 a.m., my phone buzzed. Motion alert. Living room. I opened the feed. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Then my brain caught up. Someone was standing in my living room, not moving, not facing the camera, facing the hallway, facing my bedroom. They were tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. Their head was tilted slightly, like they were listening. They stayed there for 4 minutes. Then they raised one finger to their lips, and the camera cut out. I didn't leave my room until sunrise. The police came. They searched the house, the attic, the woods, nothing. They suggested the footage was corrupted. I moved out a week later. But that's not where it ends. 3 months after I moved, I got an email. No subject line, just a sentence. You lock doors now. You didn't before. Attached was a photo, my old bedroom, taken from the hallway. Lights off, door open. Time-stamped at 2:41 a.m., 2 days after I moved out. I don't know who was living with me. I don't know how long they'd been there before I arrived. But sometimes, when my new apartment goes quiet at night, I still catch myself listening. Not for footsteps, but for breathing. Because whatever it was, never needed to chase me. It was already inside. I want to be clear about something before I start. I didn't see a face that night. That's what bothers me the most. This happened in November of 2022. I was living alone in a rental house just outside a small town in rural Wisconsin. The house sat at the end of a dead road. 3 houses total. Mine was the last one before the forest started. No streetlights past my driveway. No fence. Just trees. I worked late shifts at a manufacturing plant and usually got home around 1:30 a.m. I'd done that drive so many times I could have done it blindfolded. That night, the drive felt wrong. Not dangerous, just quiet in a way that felt intentional. About 5 minutes from my house, I noticed something in my rearview mirror. No headlights, just darkness. But the darkness was moving. I slowed down. The darkness stayed with me. Then, headlights snapped on, right behind me. So close that I couldn't see the hood of the car. I sped up. It stayed. I turned onto my road. It followed. At that point, I knew it wasn't coincidence. My road is a dead end. Nobody drives down it unless they live there. And everyone who lives there owns a truck, not a sedan like the one behind me. I pulled into my driveway. The car stopped at the edge of the road. It didn't pull in. It didn't turn around. It just sat there with the engine running. I stayed in my car for almost a full minute, watching it in my mirrors. My porch light was on, but it didn't reach the road. Finally, I got out. The moment my door shut, the engine cut. Silence. I froze. I couldn't hear footsteps, couldn't hear doors, couldn't hear anything at all. I rushed inside and locked the door. That's when the knocking started. Not loud, not aggressive. 3 slow knocks, then nothing. I stood in my kitchen, barely breathing, staring at the front door. Another knock, closer to the window this time, like someone had moved. I turned off every light in the house. I don't know why. Instinct. Minutes passed. Then I heard it, scraping. Not at the door, along the side of the house. Slow, dragging, like fingers against siding. I crept upstairs and looked out my bedroom window. The car was gone, but something else was there. Footprints. Leading from the road, around the side of my house, and stopping directly under my window. They didn't leave. They just stopped. I didn't sleep. The next morning, I found something leaning against my back door. A single boot, covered in dried mud, size bigger than mine. No pair, just one. I called the police. They took photos, asked questions, told me it was probably someone messing around. That night, I stayed awake with the lights on. At 2:47 a.m., my phone vibrated. Unknown number. Why didn't you look down? My chest went cold. I didn't reply. Another message came in. I stood there for a long time. I ran to the window. There was nothing there. But when I looked at the ground the next morning, the footprints were back. More this time, circling the house, stopping beneath every window, including the bathroom, including my bedroom. They didn't come back the next night, or the night after. I moved a month later. The last thing I ever found in that house was during the final walkthrough, inside the attic, scratched into one of the support beams. Deep, deliberate, 4 words, "I know when you sleep." I still don't know who it was. But sometimes when I'm lying in bed at night, I catch myself staring at the ceiling, wondering if they ever did look down.